Hello and welcome. I'm Douglas as usual, and I have Susan with me here today. Really excited to chat with Susan. We met some time ago, earlier this year, and um, really enjoy the work she's doing around office place decisions around how we use our spaces and how we intentionally think about returning to the office, which is an ongoing conversation, as well as just visualizing our thinking and how we see a future or even understand what's about to happen. So expectation setting type stuff. So really excited to have you today, Susan, and we'll be digging in.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I love the conversations that you have, Douglas, and everything you do with voltage control. So just such a pleasure.
Excellent. Yeah. And so I think maybe the thing that intrigues me the most, and I think listeners will find this fascinating, is all the hiring people are doing leading into 2022. Whether that is, you know, um, bringing on new folks to replace those who have left to go on to new and different things, or just because of growth. Just the company's experiencing growth, and we're having to do some hiring, and how do we support those individuals in this new context around, we're either completely remote, or there's just new tools that are, um, you know, I would say strange and different.
Exactly. So I've spoken to a lot of business leaders. Some of them are at enterprise organizations that have 27,000 employees or global organizations. Some of those have been considered essential and have been in the office the whole time as a choice. And so they have methodologies around that. And then I've spoken to other organizations that have smaller groups, let's say maybe 6,000 people, maybe 1,000 in the US, and have hired 120 people in 2020 who've never been to the office. And so they have a whole different way of onboarding folks, of introducing them to their team, their colleagues, how to work together. And so certainly all these technology and tools, training around that, how to be collaborative and asynchronous and mindful of each other. So that's been a huge topic for certainly 2021. And there's just so many more options out there, and we're exploring all of those right now.
Yeah, and you were saying that a lot of it has to do with video content, explainers, getting people some clarity around next steps, and that could be the onboarding and even the pre-onboarding step. What have you found in your experimentation there, or what's resonating with people?
Yeah, that's so true. Well, we're now getting Gen Z into the workplace, and Gen Z doesn't read emails. And so sometimes overloading them with a lot of fact sheets and text and frequently asked question sheets just kind of blows by them. And so they are huge users of video content. And so organizations, big or small, that can use video content as explainers of how to start, where to tie into IT, how to reach your, project manager, all kinds of simple ways of orienting your new employees and connecting them together through simple video explainers. I think it would be really helpful. So I am actually looking at a lot of that. And there's so many great platforms out there that make you allow you to create those on your own, like a platform I'm studying right now called Powtoons, and it lets you create the video on your own and in a customized way for exactly what you need in your organization.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. As I hear you talk about that, it makes me wonder, with the popularity of, TikTok and these kind of really short bursts of video content, and with just the creativity that these content creators bring, whether it's the amazing ideas, or even just the production value they're able to achieve with limited budgets. It seems like there's a bit of competition, if you will, around what these folks are willing to accept.
Well, and there's video content for all kinds of sources. And what you can definitely see is there's a lot of sharing of that. There's a lot of acceptance of that. Lots of organizations use Slack, and so they'll use almost like this back area part of their organization to share content and information through various groups, whether they're user experience or behavioral scientists, how to cross collaborate with information in sort of a
Mm.
back channel way. Especially if folks are new to our organization and don't know where to find things, Slack has been a really great way for some people to be able to find content and share it with each other.
So basically, the teams kind of supporting each other in the discovery and location of these materials.
Right.
Got it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I guess coming back to my reference to TikTok, how much is that kind of consumption model impacted how these onboarding videos get created, or is there a desire to keep them shorter because that's what people are expecting, and specifically kind of length and production values are the two things that I'm kind of curious about.
Yeah, for sure. So the tolerance level on long videos is almost zero. So the most common video length is about 2 minutes. And so what you do is you create little nuggets of videos for information and you sort of feed it to them in a small way. And what that allows an organization to do is create a cross section of videos for multiple types of groups in very, very small format pieces. So it's sort of a library methodology. You can link them together and you can even have an onboarding setup of videos with numbers so that you could potentially say, look at these series of videos kind of in a sequence, and then that brings them up to speed. You can do them as onboarding, you can do them as trainers, teaching folks how to be project managers, how to collaborate, lots of different ways to use videos like that. But short is super important.
Yeah, I really like this idea of they're part of a they're smaller pieces of that are part of a bigger thing, and I'm curious how you're seeing these smaller pieces getting organized. Or are folks typically using like an LMS to make them kind of stitch together, or a playlist, or what are some ways that folks are kind of stitching them together in a broader arc?
Well, and that does depend on an organization. So some will have them tied into their website library. Some will just keep them server based, and then be able to have actual links in an email structure. So it just depends on the organization, what their comfort level is. Other organizations may have their own YouTube page, may have different video content platforms that they use to deploy them. The other thing I would say is uh, too much video content eats a ton of space. So just being mindful of that to create and to kind of purge, videos that are no longer relevant is a super important way of just maintaining your data usage and just being mindful.
That's really interesting. This idea of kind of culling and purging. Um, and I've always found that when someone new is coming through the process, they're the ones that are the best suited to point out discrepancies, or hey, this is confusing, or this didn't work. And where if we've seen it a bunch, it's sort of like having um, banner blindness or something. Like you just get so used to ignoring it because it's like, or speed reading because you're pattern matching. So I'm wondering, like, if you found or seen good ways for teams to create those feedback loops for folks that are new to be able to voice those things up and get those things culled or corrected.
Yeah, for sure. Again, a platform like Slack that lets you kind of like give you a real time feedback loop on any of that is
Hmm.
totally relevant and spot on. Some of the workshop work I do really leverages a cross section of folks to be able to provide feedback on all kinds of things. And you are spot on. The ones who have just entered an organization are super ready to provide that constructive feedback, well intended. And so being a good listener, certainly in that first week, 2 weeks, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. They have really valuable information that you can glean from them, and you can fine tune all of your, whether it's onboarding or training or your team collaboration. They have great ideas, and they're totally willing to share that with people.
Yeah, I think you hit on a really important piece there, which is, there's that moment, and it's important to listen and stay tuned. And I think there's another critical step on top of that, which is we have to make sure we implement changes, because if all we do is listen, then eventually there's a people get defeated because there's a mindset of, well, nothing ever happens around here, or what's the point of saying anything because nothing gets done.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. So having a cross section of folks, so kind of really new folks, mid level to manager, having a really robust conversation about what's working well, where the gaps and challenges are, and then how you can sort of leapfrog into innovation. If you have that really nice, robust conversation with folks, you can innovate and fine tune your organization with the population that's there. They know all of your issues and challenges, and they would like to have them fixed. And they're a great resource. And there's the added benefit of employee engagement, which is super important. And kind of to your point, listening, but then following up and implementing. That is what people really want to be part of, being part of something bigger than themselves. And that's really important. So I love that you shared that.
Yeah, you hit on something really interesting there, which is be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And how do you think the onboarding or even pre-onboarding can best play a role in helping anchor in on the fact that that is a possibility, and to help them understand it and resonate with it?
Great point. Well, I think it's important for new hires, but I think it's important also for retention. And so, really just saying, and notifying people, like, what we really want to do is hear from you. We know you got some great ideas. It's validation of knowledge and expertise, and the brainstorming piece of it. And that's where people really feel like they're part of something, that they have a voice and value. And when you can let them know in advance that that opportunity is coming, it gets them excited, it gets them inspired. It's a reason to stay and a reason to provide that value. And it provides something back to the individual as well. It gives them fulfillment. And that's really what people are looking for right now, as they're considering their next career move or maybe positional shift. They want to be part of something important. They want to have an impact in the world. And so letting them say, like, hey guys, you can be part of this great new innovation thing. That's what people are seeking.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess last thing would be nice to touch on before we run out of time here is this notion of the return to work. And I know that you were doing quite a bit of that kind of discovery and exploration with leaders and teams around, how they might reimagine their spaces, repurpose them, given that, the shift that will inevitably happen as some people return, some people stay at home, some people have moved away. So what are these collaboration cycles, and what do these interactions look like? And I think since we last spoke, certainly Delta did its peak and drop off, and now Omicron's kind of making its rise. I'm kind of curious how leaders are coming to you and what's on their minds these days as far as physical spaces and the investments there, and how they support their teams and in this shift.
Yeah, well, it's on everyone's mind. Literally everyone, so big and small. So everyone's been working, so they're working remotely or in some sort of structured methodology that has a portion of folks going in, and maybe they're sequencing keeping numbers down. But the concept of bringing people back in is about safety. A piece is physical safety and mental and psychological safety. The big piece that seems to be common out there is they're giving choice, whether they wanted to or not. The employees say that choice is super important to them, and so having sort of proven for the last 20 months that that people can work remotely in teams and collaboratively and be really effective and profitable and efficient, has been a really big understanding that leaders are finally seeing. What they are trying to understand is, how does the office and the physical space support things that don't get supported in the home place? And so sometimes that's sound and acoustics. Sometimes that's continuity of Wi-Fi and other bandwidth. Sometimes it's distractions. So there are many things that work from home doesn't solve for people. And so really what they're looking at is trying to understand what the true needs are in the workplace and how to collaborate, and then solve for that, whatever that is. So those might be policies and protocols or methodologies or technology, and they may be place and they may be space. So some of the new things that organizations might look at is doing more studio-like collaboration rooms inside that you don't have at home, that you don't readily have inside people's, residences. And so those may be components that get adapted into, your office space down the road.
Yeah, it makes total sense. Like, how do we repurpose the space to, make it alluring to go there versus, oh, it's this thing I have to do a certain number of days a week, rather than having policies that force people to go back. If we design for needs and capabilities, maybe people just come back because they want to make use of these things.
I think that's right. And there is a social component that people are really hungry for, being connected. It's interesting that some of the hybrid events that I've done weren't that successful, because most people did choose to come in digitally as opposed to in person. So I'm still sort of seeing pretty low numbers on the in-person events take place, even for really large global events. And I do wonder with Omicron that that's going to continue to be true, and people will continue to do digital interactions and interactive meetings. I did speak with a CEO recently, and they said, what's interesting about this, having their leadership team on a Zoom call, and they have all the faces there, and they would say things, and they would see the reactions. And the person said, I guess maybe I wasn't reading their body language before, or maybe you're looking one direction in a room and you've got 12 people, and so you miss the other 8 that you're not looking at. And the person was saying, look, you've got all these faces on the screen, and you saw the person like kind of take a step back or tilt their head or look confused. And she was able to read the body language quickly for 12 people all at once. And it was just sort of an aha of, we are able to, have these different levels of knowledge through this digital format, and the appreciation of that. So that was just a really interesting finding that she mentioned.
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely different signals for better or worse, right? It's like, and I think that's one of the important things as facilitators, to make sure we're paying attention to how the signals are presenting themselves and what we need to pay most attention to in any given environment. So it's a good point to bring up and folks to ponder on. And that does bring us to the end of our time today. So Susan, such a pleasure. And I hope that these conversations around onboarding and pre-onboarding continue to flourish, because I think it's a beautiful thing to help people, understand and connect more, especially in the first few days. It sets the tone for their entire tenure. So it's great work, and hopefully we'll talk more soon.
Absolutely true. Pleasure to be here with you. Thank you, Douglas.